Good evening, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. The topic of the talk tonight is the history of Indian Buddhism. To give a talk like this, one has to do some research. So I referred to a few books, and the main book that I used is this book called History of Indian Buddhism by Professor Akira Hirakawa. Why I use this book? Because he is the most popular of the modern scholars on Indian Buddhism. Although he died recently, he is still acknowledged like one of the top scholars, one of the top authorities on Indian Buddhism. Also because he is a Japanese and he has done research on the Chinese books available and also on the Pali books or Sri Lankan books, etc. that are available on the history of Buddhism. So he has compared both Mahayana sources and Theravada sources. So a lot of his, what he says is valued by other scholars. That's why. There's another interesting book by this Professor Rhys Davids. That's the Literature and History of Buddhism. And there are a few others like Warder and all that. But some of those books are a bit old. This one by Professor Hirakawa is comparatively new. Now, he says that it is generally agreed by all or most modern scholars that the Buddha passed away around the year 485 BCE, which is before Common Era, what they used to call BC, before Christ. So some scholars say it is like 483, some say 484, some say 485, 86, like that, but roughly around that time. And they also generally agreed that the Buddha passed away at the age of 80. So if you work backwards, that means the Buddha was born around 565 BCE. He became enlightened at the age of 29, around 530, and then that's correct. And then he passed away at the age of he became enlightened at the age of 35. Yeah, he struggled from 29 years old until 35. And then he passed away at 485 BCE. Now, a lot of people, we have heard that the Buddha was the son of a king because his father was called Raja Suddhodana. But if you read from the suttas, actually, like for example, the Dhammadayada Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, it stated that the king of Kosala is Pasenadi, King Pasenadi. And in that sutta, King Pasenadi came to pay homage to the Buddha and praise the Buddha. And he said that the Buddha is 80 years old, just like he is 80 years old. The Buddha is a citizen of Kosala, just like he is a citizen of Kosala. The Buddha is the warrior caste, just like he is the warrior caste, and all these things. So from there we know that the Buddha was a citizen of Kosala. And so since the country has only got one king, and the king was Kosala, so the Buddha's father was not a king. The Buddha's father was one of many rajas. Raja means somebody from the royal family, royal, what we call the blue blood. the warrior caste. So for example, in our country we have many rajas and tunkus, and not all of them are sultans or agong, right? Only one is picked to be the sultan or agong. So in the case also, here Raja Suddhodana is called Raja not because he's king, but because he belongs to the warrior caste. So some people also say that the Buddha's father was the Sakyan chieftain. That also is not true. If we look into the Vinaya books, it is mentioned the first 1060 Arahants who were enlightened. And in there, there is a man called Badya. It is mentioned that the Badya was a Sakyan chief. And he was persuaded by his very good friend Anuruddha to become a monk. And finally he became a monk. And because his, what we call paramis, were very good, good qualities, within 3 or 4 months, he became enlightened, became an Arahant. So we know that the Sakyan chieftain was not the Buddha's father, but Badya. So the Buddha's father was one of many warrior caste persons, but it's also mentioned that his father was very rich, very wealthy. That's why his father built 3 mansions for him for the 3 seasons, for the winter, summer and rain season. So the Buddha, from the Gatikara Sutta, we find that he was a monk before, under the Buddha Kassapa. And in that lifetime, he listened to the Dhamma and understood the Dhamma and renounced. Originally, in that lifetime, he was a Brahmin, having attained understanding of the suttas. That means he must have attained right view and entered the stream and then became a monk. And then after that lifetime, he was reborn in the Tusita heaven and came back as Siddhartha Gautama. And as a small boy, he could enter the first jhana under the Jambu tree. So we know that first jhana must have been attained when he was a monk under the Buddha Kassapa. So if he had already entered the stream and attained the first jhana, it is logical to say that he should have become a Sakadagamin, second fruit attainer, second fruit Arya. That explains why when he came back as Siddhartha Gautama, for no good reason, he left his beautiful wife, left his newborn son, and left his loving parents who pleaded and cried, asked him not to go forth. In front of them, he shaved off his head, put on the yellow robe, and walked out of the house. If that happened to an ordinary person, we say xiao de, chi sin jo, something wrong with him. Tiga suku, how can he leave his family like that and go and become a monk, a beggar, living under the trees at night and all these things and beg for his food and all that. So the only explanation is that he's not an ordinary person. He must have become a Sakadagamin, and then only he renounced. He had to renounce because according to the suttas, when a person becomes a Sakadagamin, he's called a once returner. He comes back as a human being. One last time, he must enter Nibbana. That's why his time was due. That's why he had to go forth. So, at the age of 80, the Buddha passed away. And it is stated that when the Buddha passed away, the Sangha consisted of small groups of beggar monks and mendicants in central India. This central India means, the Pali word is Majjhima Padesa. In Chinese here, they translated it as Zhongguo, middle country, Zhongguo. So from there, this misunderstanding arose that all Buddhas are born in China. All Buddhas are not born in China. All Buddhas are born in the middle country or middle India. So through the efforts of Sakyamuni's disciples, Buddhism spread to the south and to the west. It was only later, because of Emperor Asoka, that Buddhism spread far and wide and became a world religion. Now the periods of Indian Buddhism are given as generally as 5 periods. The first one is early